year is 200 AD, and the skies over Rome are black with coal smoke. The steam engine is no longer a philosopher's toy. It is the beating heart of an unstoppable mechanized empire. For centuries, Rome mastered the ancient world through roads, disciplined administration, taxation, and military organization. But in this alternate timeline, one discovery arrived centuries before its time. Roman engineers learned how to transform heat into continuous mechanical motion, and they do not leave the invention inside a workshop. They connect it to mines, factories, ships, farms, and armies. The result is not simply an industrial revolution, it is the creation of a completely different Roman Empire. The first practical steam engines appear in the early 2nd century, initially as machines for pumping water from deep mines. Roman engineers quickly discover that mechanical power can replace thousands of hours of manual labor. Mines become deeper. Metal production increases. Coal, once regarded as an inconvenient black stone, becomes a strategic resource. The Senate initially treats the technology as another useful invention. Within a generation, that assumption becomes impossible to maintain. Coal is suddenly more valuable than gold. The empire begins mapping its coal deposits with unprecedented precision. Britain, Gaul, Hispania, and the Balkan provinces become essential to Roman industrial planning. Roads are no longer designed only for soldiers and merchants. They become arteries for coal, iron, machinery, and manufactured goods. The Roman economy begins changing at a speed that no ancient society has experienced before. Factories emerge around major cities. Their appearance is unfamiliar. Instead of small workshops operated by individual craftsmen, enormous industrial complexes use belts, gears, pumps, furnaces, and steam-powered machinery. Production becomes standardized. Components can be manufactured in large quantities and transported across imperial territory. Rome discovers the principle that would eventually define the modern industrial economy. Whoever produces more, faster, and more efficiently possesses strategic power. The military notices immediately. Roman armies have always depended on logistics. Food, weapons, clothing, construction materials, and replacement equipment must reach distant frontiers. Steam technology transforms this problem. Mechanical workshops can manufacture standardized equipment in quantities previously unimaginable. Military roads are reinforced. Supply depots become larger. Engineers develop steam-powered trains capable of moving heavy materials. The army becomes less dependent on seasonal production. This changes Roman strategy. Instead of concentrating enormous forces only during major campaigns, Rome can maintain larger permanent formations near vulnerable frontiers. Their equipment can be replaced quickly. Fortifications can be constructed more efficiently. Military roads can be expanded without relying entirely on human labor. The empire becomes faster, and speed changes geopolitics. At first, Rome's neighbors do not understand what they are witnessing. They see larger ships, better roads, more organized armies, and growing cities. They recognize the power of Rome, but not the source of that power. The source is energy. Rome has discovered how to convert underground resources into economic and military mobility. By 230 AD, industrial districts exist across Italy, Gaul, and Britain. Steam-powered pumps drain mines. Mechanical mills process grain. Industrial furnaces produce iron. Textile machinery increases production. Warehouses become enormous. Ports are redesigned around continuous loading and unloading. The Mediterranean begins functioning like an integrated economic machine. Alexandria becomes one of the empire's most important industrial and commercial centers. Its position connects Egypt, the Mediterranean, and the eastern trade routes. Rome invests heavily in roads and canals, allowing agricultural products and industrial materials to move between regions with unprecedented efficiency. The imperial government realizes that transportation is now as important as production. A new policy follows. Every major province must be connected to the imperial logistics network. Roads are widened, bridges are strengthened, ports are modernized. Coal stations appear along major routes. Industrial centers are positioned near rivers, mines, and transportation corridors. Rome is no longer simply building infrastructure, it is building a system. The political consequences are enormous. Provincial governors gain greater economic importance because industrial output directly affects imperial strength. Engineers become influential members of society. Military officers increasingly depend on technical specialists. Merchants gain political power because trade determines access to raw materials. A new Roman elite begins to emerge. It is not based exclusively on land ownership or military rank. It includes engineers, industrial administrators, shipbuilders, financiers, and logistics experts. The old aristocracy is forced to adapt. Some senators invest in factories and mines. Others attempt to preserve traditional privileges. The empire gradually develops a new political compromise in which ancient Roman institutions coexist with industrial capitalism. The transformation is not peaceful in every political sense, but it is deeply institutional. Rome learns that technological power requires administration. Machines require fuel. Fuel requires mines. Mines require transportation. Transportation requires roads and ports. Ports require security. Security requires taxation. Taxation requires reliable records. The imperial bureaucracy expands. Census systems become more sophisticated. Provincial economies are measured in greater detail. Officials track coal output, iron production, grain reserves, shipbuilding capacity, and industrial inventories. For the first time, Rome begins thinking in terms of national economic capacity. This changes its understanding of war. A future conflict is no longer judged only by the number of soldiers available. Strategists consider coal reserves, industrial output, transport capacity, and naval production. Military planning becomes mathematical. Roman commanders begin using tables to calculate supply requirements. Engineers estimate how much coal is needed to operate machinery. Quartermasters plan campaigns around industrial schedules. The Roman military becomes a hybrid institution, part ancient legion, part modern industrial organization. Its most important weapon is not necessarily a new machine. It is the ability to produce machines continuously. By 250 AD, Rome's navy has undergone an extraordinary transformation. Steam-assisted vessels begin appearing in major ports. At first, they are slow and expensive, but their strategic value is obvious. Ships are no longer completely dependent on favorable winds. That matters enormously in the Mediterranean. Roman fleets can patrol more consistently. Merchant ships can follow predictable schedules. Naval logistics become more reliable. Ports become strategic energy centers rather than simple harbors. The Mediterranean becomes an industrial highway. Rome's geopolitical position strengthens rapidly. Carthage, already integrated into the empire, becomes a major shipbuilding center. Egypt supplies grain and specialized materials. Britain becomes increasingly important for coal and metals. Gaul develops large manufacturing districts. Hispania becomes a major source of minerals. Each province develops a specialized economic role. The empire begins resembling a continental economic union, centuries before such an idea would normally appear. But industrialization also creates a problem. Rome becomes dependent on energy. If coal production falls, factories slow. If transport networks are disrupted, cities experience shortages. If a province becomes politically unstable, the effects can spread throughout the entire imperial economy. The Roman leadership understands this vulnerability and develops a doctrine of energy security. Coal reserves are stockpiled near major cities. Strategic mines receive permanent protection. Multiple transportation routes are constructed between important regions. Redundancy becomes a central principle of imperial planning. The empire cannot afford a single point of failure. This philosophy eventually influences military architecture. Frontier fortresses become integrated logistics centers. They contain workshops, warehouses, repair facilities, and fuel depots. Soldiers are supported by engineers and technical personnel. Fortifications become larger and more complex because industrial machinery makes large construction projects possible. Roman frontiers begin looking less like lines of stone walls and more like interconnected economic zones. Beyond those borders, neighboring civilizations observe Rome's transformation with growing concern. The Parthian Empire becomes particularly important. Rome and Parthia have long competed for influence in the Near East. Now, the strategic balance changes dramatically. Rome's industrial capacity gives it advantages in transportation and manufacturing, but Parthia controls critical eastern trade routes. Neither side can ignore the other. Instead of immediately seeking direct confrontation, both empires begin competing economically. Rome builds roads toward the eastern frontier. Parthia improves caravan networks and expands commercial centers. Diplomatic missions become more frequent. Merchants become strategic actors. The ancient Silk Road becomes a geopolitical corridor. Rome wants access to Asian markets without allowing a rival power to control the flow of goods. Parthia wants access to Roman industrial products without becoming economically dependent on Rome. The competition creates an unexpected outcome. Trade expands. Roman machinery reaches Eastern markets. Eastern textiles, spices, metals, and luxury goods enter Roman industrial cities. Knowledge moves in both directions. The world becomes more interconnected. By 300 AD, the Roman Empire possesses something almost unimaginable for the ancient world: an industrial economy capable of supporting massive infrastructure projects continuously. Engineers propose canals across difficult terrain. Steam-powered pumps make large-scale irrigation possible. Agricultural machinery increases productivity. Food production becomes more predictable. Population begins to rise. Cities expand. Rome itself becomes enormous, but other cities grow as well. Alexandria, Antioch, Carthage, Londinium, and Massilia develop industrial districts. New urban centers appear around coal fields, mines, ports, and transportation hubs. Urban society changes. The traditional Roman Forum remains important, but new institutions emerge alongside it. Technical academies train engineers. Commercial banks finance factories. Public authorities regulate industrial standards. Professional associations represent workers and craftsmen. Education becomes more valuable. An engineer who can design a better pump or more efficient boiler can affect the entire imperial economy. The Roman state begins supporting technical education as a strategic investment. Libraries expand their engineering collections. Universities, centuries ahead of schedule, emerge around major administrative centers. Mathematics, mechanics, metallurgy, navigation, and architecture become prestigious fields. The intellectual culture of Rome changes as well. Ancient philosophers begin debating whether machines should replace human labor. Some argue that mechanical power will create prosperity. Others worry that traditional occupations will disappear. The debate sounds surprisingly modern, but the imperial government focuses on productivity. As machines replace repetitive labor, new occupations appear. Factory management, engineering, transportation, accounting, maintenance, and scientific research expand. The Roman economy becomes more specialized. The military benefits again. Standardized components make equipment easier to repair. Industrial production allows the army to maintain consistent supplies. Naval vessels can be built using repeatable designs. Rome begins developing a doctrine of technological standardization. A bridge built in Britain should use compatible components with a bridge built in Italy. A military machine produced in Gaul should be repairable in Egypt. Imperial standards create enormous efficiency. This is perhaps Rome's greatest achievement, not the steam engine itself, the system built around it. By the 4th century, Roman strategists understand that technological superiority cannot be preserved simply by keeping inventions secret. Knowledge must be organized, improved, and integrated. Research becomes institutional. Imperial workshops compete to improve engines. Engineers test different fuels. Metallurgists develop stronger alloys. Naval architects experiment with larger vessels. Innovation becomes continuous. And that creates a completely different Roman future. In conventional history, the empire eventually faces enormous pressures from economic instability, political fragmentation, military challenges, and administrative complexity. In this timeline, industrialization changes the balance. Rome still faces crises, but it possesses tools to respond. When a frontier becomes threatened, factories increase production. When a province experiences agricultural difficulties, irrigation projects can expand. When transportation becomes inadequate, engineers build new routes. The empire is not invulnerable, it is adaptable. That distinction may determine its survival. During the 5th century, political tensions emerged between the western and eastern halves of the empire. Instead of dividing permanently, the two governments become economically interdependent. The eastern provinces control important trade routes and industrial centers. The western provinces control major coal fields, agricultural regions, and Atlantic ports. Neither side can easily function without the other. A political compromise emerges. The empire becomes increasingly federal. Local governments receive greater authority over taxation and administration, while the central government retains control over currency, foreign policy, major infrastructure, and military strategy. Rome survives by decentralizing without collapsing. This creates an entirely different European political landscape. Instead of isolated kingdoms emerging across the former Western Empire, Roman institutions continue evolving. Provincial assemblies gain influence. Cities become self-governing economic centers. Industrial regions develop strong identities while remaining connected through imperial law. Latin remains the dominant administrative language, but regional languages continue developing. The empire becomes diverse without becoming disconnected. By 600 AD, Roman technology has advanced far beyond anything recognizable from the ancient world. Steam locomotion is becoming practical. The first experimental railway systems appear near major industrial districts. Initially, they transport coal and heavy material. Soon, military planners recognize their potential. A railway can move supplies faster than a road. A railway can connect a factory to a port. A railway can allow an army to concentrate resources without exhausting animals or roads. The strategic implications are enormous. The Roman military begins constructing protected rail corridors near important frontiers. Industrial cities become linked to naval bases. Strategic reserves can be relocated quickly. Distance loses some of its power. Geography still matters, but transportation begins changing its meaning. The Mediterranean remains central, yet the Atlantic becomes increasingly important. Roman ships travel farther along the European and African coasts. Exploration expands. Cartographers produce increasingly accurate maps. By 700 AD, Roman merchants have established permanent commercial networks, reaching deep into northern Europe and across the Atlantic. The empire's greatest challenge now comes from its own success. Industrial wealth creates inequality between regions. Provinces with coal and iron become richer than agricultural areas. Cities gain influence over rural communities. Political debates intensify over taxation and infrastructure spending. The Roman government responds with investment. Railways are extended into less developed provinces. Schools receive public funding. Industrial zones are deliberately established outside traditional economic centers. Rome discovers a principle familiar to modern governments. Infrastructure can be used not only to create wealth, but to integrate society. By 800 AD, the Roman Empire has survived for centuries beyond its historical trajectory. Its borders have changed. Its institutions have changed. Its economy has changed. But the Roman identity remains recognizable. Citizens still speak of the Republic and Empire. Roman law remains foundational. The Senate survives as a political institution, although its powers have evolved. Military service remains prestigious, but technical expertise has become equally important. The old legion has become something entirely different. It is now a professional force supported by engineers, logistics officers, mechanized transport, naval units, and industrial supply networks. Its commanders study economics alongside tactics. They understand that a campaign can fail before soldiers ever reach the battlefield. If factories cannot supply equipment, or railways cannot deliver fuel, war has become an industrial calculation, but peace has become industrial too. The Roman economy reaches unprecedented levels of production. Consumer goods become more widely available. Glass, textiles, ceramics, tools, and household machines are manufactured on enormous scales. Living standards improve for many citizens. Urban life becomes increasingly sophisticated. Public transportation systems connect major districts. Mechanical water pumps improve sanitation. Refrigeration technology begins appearing in wealthy cities. Public lighting extends economic activity into the night. Rome becomes a civilization defined by motion. Yet beneath this prosperity lies a strategic concern. The empire's neighbors are learning. Roman technology is no longer unique. Engineers from foreign kingdoms study Roman machines. Merchants carry technical knowledge across borders. Independent states begin building their own factories. The Roman monopoly on industrialization starts disappearing, and that creates the next great geopolitical competition. By 900 AD, several powerful states have emerged around Rome's borders. Some possess modernized armies, others control strategic resources. A few have developed their own steam industries. Rome must now compete in a world it helped create. Its greatest advantage is scale. Its greatest weakness is complexity. Maintaining a continental industrial system requires constant coordination. Political disagreements can disrupt supply chains. Economic recessions can reduce government revenue. Technological breakthroughs elsewhere can challenge established industries. The Roman leadership creates a new institution, the Imperial Economic Council. Its purpose is to monitor production, transportation, energy reserves, technological development, and foreign competition. For the first time, economic intelligence becomes a permanent function of government. The council publishes annual assessments of imperial strength. How much coal exists, how much iron can be produced, how many ships can be built, how quickly can supplies reach a frontier, how many engineers are being trained. The answers determine national strategy. The modern concept of strategic planning is born inside an ancient empire. As the millennium approaches, Rome faces a new competitor in the north, a technologically ambitious federation of European states that has adopted Roman industrial methods while developing its own political institutions. Diplomacy becomes tense. Both sides understand that direct confrontation would be economically devastating. Instead, they compete for markets, resources, shipping routes, and diplomatic partnerships. The world enters an age of industrial geopolitics, centuries ahead of schedule. Rome responds with alliances. It signs trade agreements with Eastern powers. It invests in African ports. It expands commercial relationships with Asian states. It strengthens Atlantic infrastructure. The objective is clear. Never allow a rival coalition to control the empire's access to essential resources. The doctrine of economic diversification becomes as important as military deterrence. Rome has survived because it learned to transform technology into institutions. Now it must learn to transform institutions into global strategy. By 1100 AD, the Roman Empire is no longer merely an ancient civilization that survived. It is the world's oldest industrial superpower. Its cities are connected by railways. Its ports are filled with steamships. Its factories operate continuously. Its universities produce engineers and scientists. Its armies rely on industrial logistics. The skyline of Rome itself has changed. Ancient temples stand beside enormous mechanical workshops. Marble forums coexist with iron bridges. Steam locomotives pass beneath monuments built by emperors who lived 1,000 years earlier. The contrast is almost surreal. But the most important transformation is invisible. Roman citizens no longer think of the empire primarily as a collection of conquered provinces. They think of it as an interconnected system. A miner in Britain affects a factory in Gaul. A shipbuilder in Carthage affects merchants in Alexandria. A railway engineer in Italy affects soldiers on the eastern frontier. The empire has become an economic organism, and that organism now faces its greatest test. Beyond its borders, new industrial powers are rising faster than Rome expected. Their populations are growing. Their factories are becoming more efficient. Their governments are studying Roman history and identifying the weaknesses that Rome itself once exploited in others. For the first time in centuries, Rome is not the only civilization shaping the future. It is one of several. The question is no longer whether Rome can dominate the world. The question is whether Rome can adapt to a world where everyone has learned its methods. In the imperial capital, strategists begin examining maps unlike any previous generation has seen. Railways cross continents. Steamships connect oceans. Industrial zones surround ancient cities. New powers emerge on every horizon. The empire has transformed the ancient world. But every revolution creates competitors. And somewhere beyond the Roman frontier, another civilization is preparing to demonstrate that the age of steam may belong to no empire forever. The year is 1200 AD. The Roman Empire has ruled for 1,000 years under the power of machines. But now its leaders are studying a mysterious new map, one that shows an industrial alliance forming beyond the eastern horizon. Its factories are expanding, its fleets are growing, and its diplomats are already approaching Rome's oldest trading partners. The empire has spent a millennium mastering the machinery of power. Now it must decide whether to defend its world, reshape it, or move beyond it. Welcome to Pocket Alternate History. If you enjoyed this miniature timeline, subscribe and step into the multiverse of history.